Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a sci-fi thriller film, Children of Men. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in the future events of 2027 with a news report about the British government. The regime had approved a bill which decided that the borders would remain closed after 8 years, and it would also continue the deportation of illegal immigrants. Now the news talks about the tragic death of the world's youngest person. We see the people inside the coffee shop listen attentively to the information, but a tall man named Theo dismisses it and goes out after getting his coffee. Just seconds later, after Theo steps outside, a small explosion happens in the nearby establishment, which injures a few people and some commuters. Following that, Theo goes to work, where everyone of his colleagues mourns the death of the world's youngest person. Seeing that, Theo goes to his boss's office and lies that he wants to take home his work because the death affected him more than he expected. The boss empathetically gives permission, so Theo gets on a train to get home. On the way, the illegal immigrants are on the train tracks, throwing rocks at the passengers. Luckily, the train has barriers on the windows so the passengers remain unharmed. After that, Theo calmly steps outside the train where he sees holding cells full of illegal immigrants, guarded by the police. Theo passes them and walks towards his friend, the old man. After sharing a hug, the two get into the old man's car and drive to his house, which is cleverly hidden in the woods, unlike other houses. Inside the house, Theo sees the old man's mentally ill wife looking at the cutout newspapers about the ongoing human infertility and massive immigration of refugees for almost 2 decades. There is also a photograph of Theo with a woman and a baby. Later that day, the old man proudly talks about his drugs and lets Theo have a taste. Then the old man changes the subject and brings up the Human Project. It is an unconfirmed organization that pursues the solution to the world's infertility problems. Theo replies that it is too late even though the organization has the cure for infertility, because the world has succumbed to war and global depression to the point that humanity faces extinction. The following day, Theo passes more holding cells outside while the police arrest refugees. Then, moments after, 2 men forcibly take Theo inside a van and take him into an interrogation room where they introduce themselves as the Fishes. The Fishes is a militant immigrant rights group led by Theo's ex-wife. The leader casually talks to her ex-husband about immigrants and even British people joining their movement for equality for all immigrants in Britain. After that, the leader reveals that she needs Theo's help to get transit papers for a young refugee to get to the coast. The leader says that Theo can get the documents from his cousin who works for the government in exchange for money. Theo denies that he needs the money, so the men forcibly put a bag over his head. After that, they give him a letter and drop him off. Following that, Theo goes to his cousin, a government minister who runs a state-sponsored collection of salvage art. Theo lies to his cousin because he knows he will not get the transit papers if he tells him the truth. Theo succeeds in deceiving his cousin. Later that night, Theo meets the Fish's henchman at a bar and informs him that his cousin gave him joint transit papers, which means he would escort the young refugee. Theo is willing to do it in exchange for more money. The henchman agrees and leaves a photograph of the young refugee. The next day, Theo meets the Fish's leader, who leads him to a car where he finds the henchman, along with the young refugee and a midwife. The henchman drives towards Canterbury, but an armed gang ambushes them on the way there. The henchman quickly backs up and drives away, but the group fires at them and hits the Fish's leader in the neck. Driving away, the group stumbles upon police and ambulance cars going to the scene. Then 2 police officers stop them when they see the leader bleeding to death, but the henchman kills them. Following that, the midwife performs a prayer to the corpse of the Fish's leader in the woods. Theo walks away from the scene before he breaks down into tears and mourns the death of his ex-wife. Not long after, the henchman calls them to leave to go to the Fish's safe house on a rural farm. After cleaning himself, Theo overhears the Fishes electing the henchman as their new leader. Later, the midwife calls Theo to the barn because the young refugee wants to talk to him. In there, the young refugee reveals that she knows about Theo's child with the Fish's deceased leader. She says that the leader told her that if anything happens, she should go with Theo because he will get her to the Tomorrow, a mysterious cruise ship that will help her. However, Theo does not know anything about the boat and attempts to leave. But then, the young refugee suddenly strips off her clothes, revealing her pregnancy. Theo stares at the young refugee in shock as the realization hits him. After almost 2 decades of human infertility, a young refugee woman is pregnant standing before him. Then the Fish's new leader and the midwife come in and take Theo out. Following that, the Fishes watch the news broadcast about the armed encounter of their former leader. It also says that the new leader, Theo, the young refugee, and the midwife are now terrorists after murdering 2 police officers. The police have sufficient forensic and surveillance evidence to identify the 4 terrorists. The new leader informs everyone that the police could identify and arrest them anytime. He says that the plan of giving the young refugee to the Human Project might change because of the incident, especially because she is pregnant. Suddenly, Theo shouts that she should publicly announce her pregnancy, which gathers various reactions from the fishes. Most of them know that the government will not accept a baby from a young black refugee, even though it is the first pregnancy after 2 decades of human infertility. The young refugee wants to go to the coast and escape the government, but the new leader insists she has her baby in the safe house as it is too dangerous for her. The young refugee agrees to get to the coast after she gives birth, which gathers cheers from the fishes. Later that night, Theo hears arguing outside and overhears that the new leader planned the death of his ex-wife. They plan to kill him next and use the baby as a political tool to support the uprising revolution. Theo quickly wakes up the young refugee and the midwife and informs them about the fishes' plan. They promptly go outside and steal a car, so the fishes quickly follow them. Then the new leader comes running and instructs his men not to shoot because the pregnant refugee is inside. The fishes attempt to follow them, but they manage to outdistance the group and escape to the old man's house. Theo introduces the young refugee and the midwife to the old man. After that, they talk about the tomorrow, and it is revealed to be a hospital ship disguised as a fishing boat that will lead them to the human project. The ship will stop at the last 2 weather signals en route at sunset. One will happen later that night at Winsmore, and the other will occur on 2 days at Bexhill, which is another refugee camp. After hearing that, the old man stands up and leaves them wondering about his plan. Following that, while the 3 patiently wait for the old man's arrival, the young refugee shares how she discovered her pregnancy. She says she had never seen a pregnant lady, but she knew that she was pregnant when she started puking and her belly started getting big. Then the old man finally returns with a piece of good news. He had found someone to help them get into Bexhill, an immigration cop that frequently buys drugs from him. Later that night, after walking the dog outside, Theo overhears the old man's story about Theo and his ex-wife's love life. The 2 met in a rally and fell in love. Later on, they had a baby, but the baby was taken away from them during the 2008 flu pandemic. Theo leaves while the old man continues his story. The next day, the loud noises from outside woke up Theo. The old man quickly checks the CCTV cameras and sees the fishes breaking in. Theo promptly leaves with the young refugee and the midwife, while the old man insists on staying to stall the fishes. As soon as they go, the old man calmly says his feelings to his wife and performs a mercy killing on her. Not long after, the fishes barges into the old man's property looking for Theo. The old man lies to the new leader when his men find documents about the 3 going to Bexhill. Cornered, the old man makes a joke, but the new leader does not find it funny and mercilessly fires his gun 3 times. Meanwhile, Theo is in the woods and watches how the new leader kills his friend. After that, Theo immediately gets in the car to meet the immigration cop and drives away before the fishes find them. The following day, Theo wakes up and sees that they had stopped at an abandoned school. He finds the young refugee using the swing outside while the midwife is in one of the rooms. Out of nowhere, the midwife suddenly shares how human infertility slowly happened from one miscarriage to another without scientific explanation. Suddenly, they hear an alarm outside, so they immediately step out and they see a military car. The person instructs them to remain unmoved using a speaker. So Theo quickly says that the person inside is a fascist pig, which the old man told him to say when he meets the immigration cop. The immigration cop then steps outside the vehicle and lifts his baton in the air to scare Theo. The immigration cop then laughs, invites them to his car, and drives to Bexhill. On the way there, the young refugee suddenly feels excruciating pain from her belly, but the midwife and Theo make an alibi not to get caught and killed. The immigration cop opens the door and informs them that a gypsy woman is waiting for them inside who will help them to get accommodation. After that, the 3 pretend to be illegal immigrants, while the immigration cop pretends to scare them. Inside the bus, the midwife informs Theo that only the former leader can contact the Human Project organization. The organization usually reaches an immigrant to spread information to others until the word gets to their former leader, which means that no others in the fishes have talked to the organization before her death. After that, the bus finally arrives at Bexhill refugee camp where the young refugee's water breaks. Her cries of pain gather the attention of a police officer who attempts to take her. So the midwife distracts the officer by putting on a religious mania, but this only causes herself to be taken away. Then Theo tells the officer that the young woman pisses herself, so the officer leaves the bus in disgust. The young refugee witnesses how the police use their power to abuse illegal immigrants. Inside the camp, the 2 meet the gypsy woman, and she leads them to their room. Inside, the young refugee struggles to give birth, but a baby girl is born after a few minutes. The following day, a loud knock wakes them up, so Theo opens the door, and the immigration cop comes in with the gypsy woman. He informs them that the fishes bombed a hole to get in and freeze refugees. Meanwhile, the young refugee attempts to hide her child, but this catches the cop's attention and leads to him discovering the baby. However, the cop informs them that they need to go, but the gypsy woman tells them that it is a bad idea, so the cop shuts them up with his gun. Following that, the cop informs them that he watched on the news that Theo and the young refugee have bounties on their heads, so the cop attempts to capture them and have the baby, but the gypsy woman quickly pushes him off the stairs. With Theo's help, they kill the cop and escape. The gypsy woman leads them to a hidden rowboat surrounded by rallies and fights, but the fishes come out of nowhere and capture the young refugee and the baby. The new leader takes them into an apartment building while Theo and the gypsy woman are left behind with the angry fishes. The fishes nearly kill both of them, but the British army suddenly comes out and engages in a shooting fight with them. The two immediately escape, but only Theo follows the young refugee inside the building under a heavy shooting. Theo passes by many corpses inside and several refugees hiding. Then he finds the young refugee and the baby and attempts to leave with them, but the new leader stops them. However, an explosion kills the new leader and Theo escorts the young refugee out of the building. Everyone they pass is in awe of the baby, including the soldiers and the fishes, who temporarily stop fighting and allow them to leave. Seconds later, the war strikes again, so they immediately run away from the scene. The gypsy woman then leads them to the boat, but she stays behind. Theo quickly rows to the rendezvous point where they witness British fighter jets conduct airstrikes on Bexhill. Suddenly, the young refugee sees blood stain on the boat and panics that she is bleeding. However, Theo reveals that the new leader had wounded him earlier. Theo then teaches the young refugee how to make her daughter burp, and after that, the young woman informs him that she will name her child after his dead son. Theo smiles before he loses his consciousness. The film ends with Theo dying as the Tomorrow ship approaches their boat. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.